Welcome to Tailoring Talk. I'm Roberto Rivilla, bespoke tailor and owner of Roberto Rivilla London Suit, Shirt and Shoemakers. I weave superpowers into every stitch. Join me and we will meet self-starters and creators diving into their journeys and uncovering valuable lessons to help you be the very best you can be. Hit subscribe, leave me a rating, and let's tailor greatness together. Today, we are focusing on anxiety, stress, and burnout with the founder of Be Amazing You. A best-selling author and stress management coach, she suffered extreme burnout while pursuing her American dream, which forced her to reevaluate her lifestyle and undergo major change, connecting her father's alcoholism as having a profound impact on her stress management strategies compared with people from more stable backgrounds. Here to share her story and take us beyond burnout with some practical strategies for managing workplace stress and taking care of ourselves. Tailoring Talkers, please welcome Lolita Guarin to the show. Lolita, how are you?
I am so happy to be here and so honored.
Oh, thank you. I'm honored. Did I pronounce your surname correctly?
Oh my gosh, yes. It takes a while for people to pronounce my name, but definitely you did a good job. And those who are listening in and they like, oh, Lolita Guarin, so that's very Spanish. No, I have nothing to do with Spanish language. It just happens to be that I have a name like this. I'm actually from Lithuania and I came to US 24 years ago. My grandmother gave me the name Lolita after Lolita Torres because she wanted her first grandchild to be somebody named after, some actress. And then I married a Spanish speaker, so then I got a Guarin. But my maiden name is Chesnavichute. So for those
Ah,
who want to repeat 15 times.
that sounds a little bit more Lithuanian. Yeah, exactly. That's amazing. So you went from Lithuania to the United States, and where in the United States are you based?
In Houston, I came to US as an au pair, as a nanny. And people ask me, why did you choose Houston? And I'm like, well, I think Houston chose me. I came here and then my parents won a green card lottery. Yeah, that thing still exists. And since I was here in Houston, they came here too. And I lived here for 24 years now.
Yeah, wow. And I have to mention, because obviously you know what I do for a living, my day job, I absolutely love your blouse, the blue and white stripes, the white contrasting white collaring cuff. I'm trying to bring that back with my clients, but they are very, they're very resistant to it. I think that look just looks so great, whether you're male or female, doesn't matter. I just think it's so cool because it's so intentional as well. So thank you for bringing some flair to the show today.
Well, thank you for compliments.
Now, you've given us a little bit of your story of how you got to the United States. Before we obviously get into the kind of practical part of this chat, I wanted to kind of dive more into your story and the experience you had that led you to making such big changes in your life. Because I not the same, quite the same as you. My parents, were not affected by alcoholism, but they were disciplinarians. And so a lot of my childhood was spent at home living in fear. I didn't want to be at home because anything I did that was slightly wrong, I mean, nowadays you would look at a child um, dropping something or breaking a plate or something like that. And it's like, it's no big deal. These are things that can be replaced. It's like, so what? But particularly to my father, it was like it was like a world ending situation. And then he would take everything out on me physically. And I don't know if that came from his father, because his father was in the Pakistani military and they moved around a lot all over the world. So my father, I don't know because he never talks about it, but I've heard some stories from my mother that he moved around a lot. So he was like an army kid. And I would guess that my grandfather was probably a big disciplinarian, which is why my father, that was the way that he knew how to discipline me. And I think in a lot of my interactions as an adult, and certainly when I look back at certain situations growing up, that it definitely has impacted the way that I react and deal with stressful situations. And you obviously came to that realization through that as well. But I did warn you that my questions take a very long time to come out. But just kind of take me back, if you will, to what you experienced.
So when I came to US, I knew that if I will work hard and I take over projects, in how they say, if you want to make more money, you need to have more responsibilities. And I was taking on a lot, but I also ended up, working overtime even on the weekends because I was afraid to say no. I was an immigrant, and it doesn't matter you immigrant or not. Like you just described about yourself, if you grew up in an environment that your needs really don't matter, and you've been told what to think, what to say, what to feel, and even you are afraid to feel, even give yourself permission to ask yourself, who are you and what is that you want? You will be a people pleaser. And so in the workplace, I was taking on other people's jobs just because where somebody says, hey, I'm going on vacation. Can you take this PowerPoint presentation, do it for me? And I will be like, yeah, sure, I'll do that for you, even though I know I don't have time to do this. And so no boundaries, obviously. Nobody told me what boundaries are. In my family, everybody will be extra emotional and over the top, and everything is big deal, as you can relate.
Yeah.
And there was no space even for me just say, I'm going to close the room and I'm going to do whatever and be by myself. There was not such thing. Everything is so involved. There is no boundaries at all. And obviously in the workplace, it was the same thing to me. More than that, I really didn't know how to handle my emotions, and nobody told me. Like majority of us, nobody teaches you what to do with emotions, and it's such a bad thing if you feel angry, for example. Oh, don't you dare to be angry because this looks bad, and so you're basically abandoning yourself all over again. And so what came to burnout is that I didn't have enough time for myself at all. I didn't do any exercises, what comes to like a normal taking care of your body and your mental state. I had no time for that. But what when I made myself to the point that it really impacted my body, and I was in my 30s, and I thought, oh, I just can conquer the world, and I'm in my 30s. I should be all healthy all the time. And that impacted my body so much that impacted my hormones. And any women listening to this podcast know what means women in hormones are very important. And that's how I end up in the emergency room. That basically that was a wake up call for me to think, okay, I really need to pay attention. What am I doing? And I thought I don't want to take any pills on none of that because when you look at nature, nature also has plenty of stress, but the nature knows how to handle that, and I didn't. So I started doing those what they call stress management staples. Um, like you have your time management, you're learning to say a little bit of no and here and there, and I and it helped me a lot and do like meditation and yoga and all the things and journaling, and those are the staples of stress management. But what I realized, mm, I became a stress management coach because I just loved sharing my message with everyone. And what really hit home is when I was reading this book about how to get more clients. And the author of the book mentioned that she was an adult child of alcoholic, and I never heard of that before. And my dad was an alcoholic, and I was like, whoa, here I am in like mid 30s, and I never even heard about this thing. And then I started reading what does it really means. And I realized that, oh, okay, that's why I'm so stressed out. My anxiety and my hypervigilance, it is my normal state of mind. I am already burnt out. That's my normal. It's how I operate because I came from this environment where I've been trained to constantly be on alert. Like I was afraid to go home after school because I had no idea what state my dad will be. But for those listening in right now, they're thinking, oh, you know what? I don't need to listen for the rest of the podcast because guess what? I had no addiction in my family. So ta-da. Like, no, the majority of us didn't get the needs met because the kid always needs to be, obviously fed and have sleep and all that. But emotional needs are very important. The child needs to feel safe in the environment to grow up as like a very functioning adult. And you can have, like you mentioned about yourself, it was a scary situation because you even don't allow yourself to become who you are. You're afraid to even identify yourself to yourself. You're even afraid to look at yourself because every time when you do something that has to do with you get punished for that. So that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing when we children like this. We grow up into adults that nobody tells us how we need to uh, just take care of yourself. And we such a herd animal. So we need to be in the group. Then we will people please in order to survive. So when I realized that, okay, so I am taking this way too seriously, and it's just by thinking, I'm sure we all of us being in the meeting or in the room or party, whatever, and something happens. Did you notice how different people act to that very differently? Because how we're being wired, what patterns do we have? How do we know how to take care of emotions, how to take care of stress management, itself, and knowing our own bodies and my own minds. So when I started coaching my clients, they come to me and they say, oh, you know what, I'm burnt out, I'm stressed out, I cannot do this anymore, I have this family to take care of, I have a business to run to, I just don't know what else to do, and I don't have time on top of that. um, I always ask them, why do you think you cannot give yourself the break? Because they always say, I don't even have a 1 minute in the day to do this. It is really, that's the moment for you to ask what environment I grew up with. Because if you were not seen, loved, and appreciated for who you are, just for being you, you will become useful. You will become workaholic. You will become somebody that think, you know what, if I'm just going to be better, if I'm going to make more money, if I'm going to have a better house, if I'm going to have, all those people in my life, you have the rewards, maybe then I'll be loved because now I'm worthy of that love. And that's what that really burnout that has to do in the workplace or in a goal setting or having your own business and all of this, you just constantly running to the horizon that you will never reach. And that's the cause of the burnout. That's, the body keeps the score. And at some point, you're going to become physically ill. And that's very important to realize where that you're coming from. And then you can apply tools. But here's the funny part is if you grew up in an environment where your needs were not met, and let's say you were abandoned, your needs were abandoned, you will abandon yourself as well because that's the relationship that you'll learn. That's the relationship pattern. So you will not even honor your own needs in order to survive. So when I started coaching my clients, they say, I don't even have 1 minute. And I say, why do you think you don't deserve to take 1 minute? Because you can have amazing tools in the world. I can tell you right now, oh, you need to, do this meditation. But if you really don't believe it's going to help you, it's not going to help you. I can give you a whole book written, and actually I wrote the whole book. It's called Crush Stress While You Work. It's only tips and tricks how to do it specifically in any situation. You can do in 5 minutes, really, and it makes a difference. And I have still clients not doing that. It's always just like it's not about the tool. It's about, are you willing to do it? And if you're not, then ask yourself, how is that serving you? Because overall, it's all about survival. It's always serving us. And I'm sad to say, but we are willing to kill ourselves in order to survive.
And that sounds really extreme to some people listening. To other people, like including myself, they'll be nodding their heads frantically because, I guess when you're taking someone who is experiencing burnout, there's something really, really important you said there, which is that people who come from abusive backgrounds where, as a child, needs not met, we are in a constant state of high alert. So when I think about myself as an adult, one thing, so people used to describe me. I remember at college, one of this girl, Sabrina, she was staring at me one day. I was in this, the common room at college, and I was just sat on my own, just slightly off from everybody else because I could never make myself really. I wanted to be part of the group with everyone, but I never felt like I was worthy of being part of the group. So I used to just be slightly off observing. And I remember Sabrina, she said, you're like a cat. And I said to her, what do you mean? And she said, you're exactly like a cat. She said, you never really join in and nobody can really kind of get to you unless it's on your terms. And I'm still like that today. I want to be a dog. And once I warm up and I get to know people and there's a level of trust there, then I am more like a dog. But I'm still very, very cat-like in my behavior. I think my wife would definitely be agreeing if she was here next to me right now. And that's probably why we have two cats and two dogs in the house too. Um, but on a constant state of high alert. So people can approach me to give me a hug, and it could even be my wife, who is my best friend in the whole wide world and a person who does love me unconditionally, and I know that she does, but even she will approach me, and if I'm not expecting it or prepared for it, I will flinch like I'm being attacked. And that definitely comes from childhood because I would go home and I'd be in a constant state of high alert because I didn't know if a fist was going to come my way unexpectedly. Because it would never be, we need to talk to you about something. It would be the punch first. And then at some point down the line, I would discover what it was that I had quote or quote unquote done wrong. And that was really tough. And then what would happen is I would end up not wanting to come home. I would do anything to not be at home. And that leads me to the next point that you made, which was that we will self-harm, we will kill ourselves before we even think about taking care of ourselves or taking a minute for ourselves. Because I didn't want to come home. I would work. When I got my first full-time job, I was only supposed to be working like 5 days a week, right? 40 hours. I would do 120 hours a week. I would go in when I wasn't even being paid. Like they would say to me, you cannot be here. We are not going to pay you overtime. And I was like, I don't care. I will work for free. I just need to be here, not there. Um, wow. Wow.
I can say two things to that. I believe all of us are doing the best we can, even the parents who are harming the children, really. And my dad was an alcoholic, and when I read the book, how much damage I'm being, I took when I was growing up. First of all, I didn't realize that, I there was some damage done because nobody talks about that. It's shameful, and everything is perfect, and you're not supposed to tell this to anyone. And I'm only one child, so I had no brothers or sisters, and so really had nobody to talk to about that. And so everything for me, that hostile environment, it was like totally normal. And my mom never had addiction problems, and I always had food and what to wear and all of this. I went to school on time, and it looked like very, very, very good and functioning family. uh, and so when I realized that there was something, oh my gosh, that thing happened to me. First I immediately thought, oh my gosh, I'm damaged. This is it. Like, I cannot achieve my goals because who will accept me? And then this, after I got over that and think, well, a lot of people have all kinds of stories. I don't think there's one person in the world that says, oh my gosh, I'm so happy from the beginning. Because human experience itself, it already starts with the trauma when you're being born. Okay. That's already very stressful to begin with. So it's a human condition. But also, I got very angry at my dad, and first I got ashamed on my, at myself, like, oh, how dare I to be, um, angry at my dad. You're not supposed to be angry at your parents. They are gods, they are the authorities. Um, but then I allowed myself to be angry and just to be disappointed and think to myself, well, the person who's supposed to be there for me, who's supposed to show me, what the even relationship patterns between men and women like, right? Because that just messed up the whole understanding how my intimate relationship should look like, or any friendship with the opposite sex should supposed to look like. Um, After I got that anger issue, I realized that it goes from generation to generation, and nobody teaches our parents how to parent either. And then I start thinking about, I remember when my dad will come back home drunk, he will call his parents. And I remember over and over him asking them, why you don't love me? What did I do wrong? And when it hit me that, oh my gosh, my dad's just another, child that did not get what he needed. And then when I think about my grandparents, they didn't know how to raise kids the right way, because like I come from Europe, from Lithuania, and that's like we're talking World War II. What life looks like when you're in a war zone. Talking about stress. So
Yeah.
it goes from generation to generation. And so I forgiven my dad, and I know he's doing his best. And I think addiction is just something, is like a soothing mechanism for somebody to not to feel anymore. So I always encourage to allow yourself to feel and stop abandoning yourself. And this saying is, everywhere you go, you take yourself with you. Well, I say, if you abandoning yourself, you're really not taking yourself with you. Because if you grew up in the environment where your needs were not met, or there's a part of you that even if you loved, it's being told it's bad for you, don't you dare showing this part, you'll shove it away. So that's mean it's not fully you, it's not 100%. So when somebody tells you, I love you, you don't believe them. You're like, no, you don't, because you don't even know me. There's parts of me that I shove it away and I'm not showing to anyone, because I'm afraid to even show it to myself, because I know I'm gonna get punched if I get that part of myself into the world. And I think the biggest pandemic these days is loneliness. You can be in the group of people and that even look like friends, but you're even afraid to tell them what happened to you. Are you afraid to tell about your dreams because somebody will laugh at you? And then you feel abandoned in a group of people. But I recommend, stop abandoning yourself too, because when you do not pay attention to your own needs, you do not honor what you feel, you abandon yourself in that too. And I know there are plenty of success gurus that say, yes, you just can, chant your manifestations. And they say you cannot bulldoze yourself into success. And that's why the diets don't work if you don't have the proper set of mind. That's why you will never achieve the goal, no matter how many hot calls you go through. If you believe that you don't deserve it, you will do everything that will prove you right, because mind always wants to be right. That's our survival mechanism. So stop abandoning yourself by doing, and somebody says, well, what do you use that you mean, stop abandoning yourself? So, for example, just really tune in your body. Just feel it. How does that feel? Do you feel comfortable? Maybe you have shoes that are too tight. Well, take those shoes off. Is it something making you hot or cold? Are you dehydrated? Just take care of your own physical needs. Then your mind, think about, okay, am I stressed out? What am I stressed out about? Lots of times we imposing ourselves stress. In many situations, maybe not be that complicated, but we make it like a super big deal. So any situation you're in, always ask yourself, will this matter in 5 years? If it doesn't, let it go. And do something that you really like doing it. And even if, let's say, and I had days like that I know I need to go to the gym and I don't really feel good that day, I tell myself, you know what? I am not going to go to the gym, because I am not going to abandon myself. I'm going to honor my needs. And that moment, what happens? You prove it to yourself that you are your best friend. You prove it to yourself that you have grace and you have forgiveness and you can accept the way you are. And then you will build trust in yourself, because you know that you're not going to abandon yourself. When you get that trust, then you feel more secure and more safe. Then you get more confidence. Then you can show up better in the world. And then that's what the true self-love is, what I think.
Yeah. Um, this is not going the way I planned. And I,
Sorry.
no, 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 don't apologize. It's fine. I'm going through a thought process here because you've really, really impacted my thinking. Um, I firstly, I want to just also say that I don't blame my parents. I don't blame my father. There was a period of time I was very angry at him, and I did blame him. But with age and maturity, you kind of start to sort of think, why did he do that? And he didn't know any different. My grandmother, she died when he was very young, and my grandfather remarried and had a whole new family very quickly and left his first set of children behind in Pakistan and came to London and then had a whole new family. And my father, being the eldest child, he, with barely any money at all, he managed to get himself over here to seek his father out. I don't know what happened exactly, but eventually he met my mother, made a life for himself. He only reconciled with his father when his father, so my grandfather died when he was about 72, so the age that my father is right now. Um, and that's the other thing as well is that, I kind of almost feel like a bad son because I haven't worked out how to fit my parents back into my life because we were estranged for a good 12, 15 years. Um, my father kind of went through that same sort of thing, but he only reconciled with my grandfather when my grandfather was on his deathbed. But also he must be very aware of his mortality right now because he's the age that my grandfather was at when my grandfather died. But I don't blame him for anything. So anyway, it was important to say that. Um, you mentioned boundaries, and certainly with myself, there were no boundaries. When I went into the world of work, no boundaries whatsoever. I would just work, 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 work because I was trying to get away from the other thing. Um, and then that just became a way of being for me. So, through every single job that I've had, and then when I started my own business and launched my own brand 12 years ago, I basically just was going full steam ahead like I always had done. But when I burnt out and crashed last summer, so nearly a year ago now. And at the time, I thought, I'm feeling burnt out. We need to go away. So we went to Cyprus for 10 days, and I thought that would fix it. And it obviously didn't. And so I've been feeling the same symptoms ever since, and even to this day. But I've been thinking more and more. I've been trying to tune into within myself to try and work it out what it is because it's not just thoughts of I don't want to work, I'm tired, I don't want to deal with the world, but it's also just things on questioning whether I want to keep living the way I've been living from a more a sort of life perspective point of view, if that makes sense. I've been suddenly thinking more not just all of this paperwork on my desk, but more life in general. And um, yeah, I don't actually know the point I'm trying to make, but I think definitely what you mentioned about boundaries does come into it because then I was also thinking while you were talking that, and also maybe some of my listeners are thinking the same thing. It's like, okay, fine, we get it. If you are someone who grew up with some sort of trauma or deprivation in your childhood, then that has an effect on how you handle stress management and so on. But if you're someone who grew up and maybe you're in a very wealthy family and both your parents were there for you and they wrapped you in cotton wool since day one and always told you how amazing you are and how much you are loved and you never wanted for anything in your life, how how do those people get burnt out?
I think we all need to have some sort of conflict in life, some sort of difficulty. Otherwise, life becomes very boring. And I had clients who have everything that they want. They bought everything that they wanted. They have a happy family, and they totally unhappy, and they have no purpose. So, um, just to reflect a little bit of what you said, uh, it's very important to acknowledge how far you went. And I always recommend everyone to do the accomplishment list and then look at that list. And, even small things like, getting driver license, for example, not necessarily needs to be all the rewards in life. And just kind of look at that list and think to yourself, wow, that's me, giving yourself credit. And if you look at that list and you imagine that that's a friend of yours, let's say you reading friends list, what you will think about that person? No, will you be think, wow, you will you admire that person? So that's what you need to give it to yourself. So um, how to remedy this never-ending running to the horizon of thinking, when I get there, then I'll be happy. Then I will feel like I accomplished something. Start appreciating things that already done. And that's what we come to gratitude. But it's not like, okay, well, thank you very much. I have a bed, I have a shower, thank you very much. But it's about like, wow, I did that. This is awesome. To giving yourself credit, even getting out of bed when you didn't even feel like you wanted to. Just giving yourself acknowledgments and saying, that is a big deal. And especially, we always have tendency to look at the bad things. Naturally, that's just, pure survivalist brain. But it's very important to pay attention to those good things too. So no matter what you achieve, when you finally full, like when you eat and eat and eat and then you're full, uh, try realizing that you can be full at some point. And I when I was working on the stress on this stress management book for the workplace, I interviewed over 200 successful entrepreneurs and CEOs of a company, small and big. And those that were the most successful ones, there was a common thing that they told me. They delegated a lot of things. So first, start appreciating yourself, giving yourself kudos, and appreciating gratitude for what you already accomplished. So you have this feeling of, okay, now I'm full, I ate enough. Still next till tomorrow, because tomorrow you're gonna eat again. Um, but also look at that, all the stuff that you're doing, and you ask yourself, okay, this is what my day looks like. Am I doing this because I love doing this, or am I doing this because I have to? And then if there is something that you have to, then you think, okay, can I delegate this to someone? Um, can you ask somebody to do that for you? And see, is it really important? Because there's so many things that we put on the list to do that maybe not even making a difference at all, but it makes us feel maybe better. Maybe if we think like, oh, I'm just so busy, especially with the business owners. Those so many items on the list that really don't make a movement forward at all. So it's very important to see, what is your energy going? Do you really enjoying it? What you can eliminate it, what you can delegate it. And then you always have to pencil yourself into your schedule. You have to prioritize that. And when I have clients who come in to me and they say, I don't even have one, for example, simple trick. I say, every hour on your phone, put an alarm on. When alarm goes on, stop whatever you're doing. Of course, if you are available, do it. If you're driving, don't do that, obviously. But just close your eyes and do nothing at all. Just breathe in deeply, breathe out, disconnect, and tell yourself, this 1 minute is for me. If you now listening in and you're thinking, oh my gosh, there's no way I'm going to do this, then you need to ask yourself, why not? Why you don't love yourself enough to even give yourself 1 minute? So when I deal with clients who say they cannot even afford that 1 minute, they say, oh no, you don't understand. I need to take care of my family and my business and all the people who depend on me. I say, if you're not going to keep yourself full, there's no way you can give to others. Who's going to take care of those people and your business when you are sick in a hospital? Because that will catch up with you. It will. It's already science proven. So if you want to help others, start with yourself. If you feel guilty, especially if you came with some childhood trauma and feeling unworthy and and like loving yourself is a bad thing because it's, oh my God, you're so selfish. Oh my gosh, how dare you? Then think about it that it's just a step how you can help others. It's just a step how to help your parents and your children. Because if you low energy, if you're stressed out, burn out, you sick, there's no way you will help the others. So it's like an airplane, right? You put your mask on first so you can take care of others.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's um there's been a lot, funny enough, just yesterday I was at an event and we were talking about some of this. And I've definitely been talking a lot, not just on the podcast, but with various different clients of mine as well and friends. Um, as you get older, you start to have an appreciation for, well, maybe not appreciation, you start to worry a little bit about the time in the hourglass not being so much as it was when you were younger. And definitely part of self-care is when you're doing something that you don't like to do, that you hate. Why are you wasting your time and energy doing it? Um, focus on the things that you want to do. And what you were also talking about, needle movers, I was having a long conversation about that yesterday, about, that we need to really kind of stop and look at what we're doing in the moment and say to ourselves, is what we're doing right now, is that really moving the needle in terms of what we want to do, what we want to achieve? Or is it just not really doing anything? In which case, why are we wasting time doing it? But the other thing I just made a note of was I put in block capital letters, appreciate now, because I don't think it matters who you are, whether you're from a poor background, a rich background, whatever. We all have some scars as we come through life because it's the human condition. Um, but then we all have this tendency to look back at what happened. This happened, this is why I am the way I am, etc. So this is why I cannot do certain things, blah, blah, blah. Or look forward to the horizon, like you said, like when this happens, when I achieve this, when we do this, when we get to there, that's when I will. We never actually stop and say, where am I right now in this moment? And actually take time to actually appreciate that moment. There's one thing I started doing a little while ago because, as I mentioned to you at the beginning, we have two cats and two dogs, and particularly the dogs. The cats will probably live for a very long time. The dogs, not so much, unfortunately. And especially now because one's 9, one's going to be 10 years old this year. Their life expectancy for these breeds is like 12 to 14 years. There's not much time left. And so every time when I wake up in the morning, I come down and I do my thing. And then a few minutes later, they both get up and they come to find me. And the first thing I do is I hug both of them and I say to them, I love you. I'm so, so glad that we get another day together because that sets my day up for them being front of my mind and being my focus. And when my wife comes down, or if I don't get to see her because I leave earlier and she gets started a little bit later, it's at least making the time to actually message and actually say, hey, I fed them, blah, blah, blah. I hope you have a great start to your day. And then making sure that we catch up at some point and then making sure we have that quality time together in the evenings as well. And setting those boundaries to protect those things. Um, I talk to people who are just, they work until 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, and then they're up again 3 hours later. And it's like, when do you get, or people who travel all the time in different time zones and they're constantly in the air, going all over the globe, but they have families. They are very, very successful. They're earning a lot of money. I'm sure these are the types of clients that you deal with as well, but they never ever see their children. They don't see their wives. And I think to myself, what's the point?
And then they're inflicting the trauma to the children because they think, I'm going to bring all this money. But that's not what the child needs. That's why children can be very happy and no matter what environment, in a poor environment or rich, because the child needs to be seen by their parents. They need to be adored and loved for who they are. But if their parents never there, that emotional need is not met, and that is, a small childhood trauma, but continuously over every single day can impact it. So, wow, that's
Anyone
so
who's listening to the audio, Lolita's just met Emily because Emily's just been walking around my legs, so I'm not going to ignore you, am I? Hmm? This is
Oh, she's a
Emily.
happy dog.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. So it really is more, no matter who you are, what your background is, it is about focusing primarily on yourself and giving yourself grace wherever possible. Because if you don't do that and you don't then allow yourself to take care of yourself first, then how can you possibly have the capacity to be able to look after anybody else in your life?
And in my book, the stress management for adult children of alcoholics, I include every I have 25 chapters in the book, and every chapter I talk about the specific thing that maybe children who grew up in the environment may be struggling when they adults. For example, um, seeking immediate gratification in our society is being taken as such a bad thing. But every chapter in the book, I end to use this as a superpower, because I think when you grew up with something, use this as a tool for your future. Use this as a tool for the people around you. And I have no patience because of that, maybe. And I get uh, shit done. I do not wait out. I just get it done. And somebody who came from a dysfunctional families or just with some trauma, they are more resilient, and they can show that resilience to others. They can have more empathy towards others, and grace. And I always invite everyone who's listening in, no matter where you came from, it's great that you experience that human experience, and now let's just use this as a tool, for to improve your life and improve other people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Lolita, thank you so, so much. There's not really been much work for me to do today with you. You've been so generous and so giving, and I've honestly really appreciate that, and I know that our listeners will as well. Um, Anyone who's listening, whether it's yourself or somebody who's going through just a really, really, really bad time and maybe can't even sort of see any kind of light at the end of the tunnel, I urge you to connect with Lolita, or at the very least, if you want to kind of get some more of her insights, then check out her books, because it's not just the one, because I have a note of stress management for adult children of alcoholics, but that's not the only book that you've written.
Correct. And there's a crush stress while you work. So it's specifically how to manage stress in the workplace that can be found on Amazon as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Lolita, I always ask this question to every single guest. It kind of doesn't seem appropriate, but have you had fun today?
Yes, I was just listening to you and I thought to myself, wow, I had such a great conversation, because with podcasters, usually they just ask questions and they never talk about themselves. And I was so grateful that you spend this time and you were courageous enough to open yourself to the listeners and telling about your personal story too. And it especially those memories that can be very painful, because it takes courage to open yourself. And that was so much pleasure for me, because now I know you more. And yes, that made my day actually.
Yeah. Oh no, thank you. That's what I've tried to do since day one on this show. It's all about honesty, and I'm kind of known for being a no BS tailor in my day job. And I try to be consistent with that, with what I'm doing here as well, because at the end of the day, whether I'm making clothes for people or, having these conversations with wonderful people like you, it's all about trying to help people and to try and help them to just be better in life, because we're all struggling no matter what it is that we're doing, whether you're someone who's flying around in private jets, we know people, I've known people who seem to just have everything, but then, in their deepest, darkest moments, they're struggling with addiction and so on for various reasons, and people who are like me and you who've kind of been through that sort of thing as well. So, helping people is what I like to try and do, and it's just so amazing when I get a guest like you who's just so open, honest, and just so giving and selfless as well. So thank you so, so much. And thank you all so much for joining Lolita and I. I will have all of her links in the show notes for you. So if you want to even just schedule a one-on-one with Lolita, hit the link to her website, www.beamazingyou.com. She'd be, I know, more than happy to speak to you. No obligation. Thank you so much for joining us. Follow the show on Instagram at Tailoring Talk Podcast for the latest episode updates, highlights, and news. The podcast is also available on YouTube at Roberta Rivilla London, and you can email me at tailoringtalkpodcast@gmail.com. Hit subscribe, give the show a rating and a review, and click the share button in your player to send this episode on to someone you know who needs to hear what Lolita shared with us today. And if you love Tailoring Talk and want to support the show, you can hit the support the show link in the show notes. Have a great week. Be good to each other, and I'll catch you on the next one.